Welcome back to Next Gen Investing. It's now time to discuss AMD with earnings out after the closing bell today. And joining us is Marley Kayden, host for the Schwab Network, to give us some more insights on what the street is really expecting. And I can imagine the bar is high here, Marley, because this has been a name on an absolute tear. We've had major partnerships, OpenAI, Oracle. Is that enough, though, to finally break this trend that Alex and I have been discussing of downbeat price after earnings?
It remains to be seen. Those big deals, though, are likely not going to come into play in this report, though. That's important to note. Those are likely going to come into play in coming quarters. So those OpenAI deals, the Oracle deal, those won't come into play till at least next quarter. But for this third quarter, EPS expected to come in at $1.17 on revenue of $8.72 billion. That would be growth across the board on both the top and the bottom line. So they're looking for that. Their data center server and AI segments are expected to deliver $2.4 billion for the data center server segment and $1.7 billion in revenue for the AI segment. Now, analysts are really upbeat about these third quarter results for the non-AI component of the business. It's that AI business that could potentially be a different story and could lead to some of these downward movements that we've seen from some of these other companies. Morgan Stanley saying that they're seeing AMD's graphics processing unit demand going into earnings report as being merely fine. That's a quote. That's merely fine. The firm is, quote, not looking for near-term upside in that segment. So if that comes to fruition, that is the potential to be a downward catalyst. Also looking for any clues beyond this quarter about those big deals with OpenAI, with Oracle, and its MI450 series. That 450 series and the first rack scale offering, Helios, are both slated to launch in the second half of next year and are the key for investors, according to Morgan Stanley. That first gigawatt of their OpenAI deployment will be powered by that system, by the MI450 and the Helios. That's expected to start again in the latter part of 2026. So Morgan Stanley saying it's still too early for them to make any sort of market share assessments because that deal is really to deploy 6 gigawatts worth of energy. So it's hard for them to say with any certainty that they will have anyone else. There could be other cloud providers that help ramp up this rollout. They said ultimately to drive share gains, the company will need to provide better return on investment than NVIDIA can offer. That's what Morgan Stanley is saying. That's how they're going to have success. And customers still raise questions about that given lower rack density and the need to resolve some ecosystem issues. UBS added that they expect a strong third quarter report, but the company's setup is, quote, challenged by the recent outperformance of its stock. You know, Jenny, like you mentioned, year to date, up almost 110%. So really strong performance here. And they also added that they thought AMD could hold off on any big news until its analyst day later this month. So there may be a little bit of a holding back on the call here to try to save some upward momentum for after earnings.
I wonder if they'll change that game plan post Palantir and the fact that we're down almost 2% in the NDX today. It's to the point where maybe it's just you're prisoners of the moment. Like, I don't know what they're going to be able to say that rationalizes the move that we've seen in this stock over the last month.
I mean, it's a similar story, like you said, to Palantir. You know, you saw incredible results. We had a guest earlier on Trading 360 call them video game numbers. I mean, they're almost...
Was that Kevin Hinks?
No, it was not.
I've heard that term before.
It was Shai Velour from Future Room said it. And it was just very interesting because everyone is just bowled over by the numbers. But you can see the stock under major pressure today for Palantir. So, Alex, you pose a really good question. Yes, a lot of the analysts think that they may hold back some important details or important information or announcements from the earnings call for their analyst day. But do they still have the ability to do that with the downward pressure we're seeing on names like Palantir and them putting up the kind of numbers they put up?
And it does help that they have seen, I mean, like I know that deals won't necessarily play into necessarily earnings, but we've seen like major investments from, I mean, not only just these other companies, but the Department of Energy. I mean, they're expecting to power 2 supercomputers at the Oak Ridge National Lab. So I think that the U.S. government also backing a lot of these, U.S.-based semiconductors has been huge, but there is still this looming impact, like $800 million we could see from export controls to China, which that will be interesting to note how that situation is addressed, because I do think that's still something that we brush off in light of like OpenAI, Oracle, but that is still a pretty major concern for AMD.
It certainly is, and we've seen that go both ways in some of these reports. Some very direct commentary on China and the China situation. We've also seen no commentary on China and the China situation. So that's another question. How will they approach that? Will China be excluded? Will there be any commentary there? Or will they say, we're waiting for a developing situation to have some sort of finality before we comment?
Yeah, and this name now trades at a forward P of almost 51 times. So, I mean, I think that the argument to be made about like the overextension of AMD is fair. Now trading nearly 40% above its 50-day moving average through at least Monday's close. So I know we've pulled back today, but still been a really phenomenal performer.